So, hello, BookTube. This is the off the shelf tag. This was created by Mike at Bibliophile Reads, and the point of this is to just show who I am as a person, what my temperament is, and how that affects my reading. I think these are very highly relevant considerations. Obviously, your reading changes you, but who you are as a person will very much dictate the direction that your reading takes. So, the first question is, when you're not filming or reading, what does a normal day in your life look like? So, work, school, etc. I am a practicing lawyer. I've been practicing for 2 years and a couple of months, and I've generally done private law. So things like wills and estates, conveyancing. I've done divorce, family law matters, maintenance issues, the road accident fund, so motor vehicle accidents, and then the liability that follows from that. So working with insurance and that kind of thing. I spend a lot of time in litigation, so in various courts across kind of Durban and surrounds, also in the administrative offices. So, for example, the Master of the High Court is the kind of governing body. Once you die, your will is registered as with other various documentation, so marriage certificate, identity document, all of these things. And there are various administrative procedures that have to be followed before your income and assets can be distributed to your beneficiaries. So those are the kinds of things that I have done previously, but I'm looking to transition into public interest law and human rights law. That's something that I've always been interested in, but I had to complete my articles of clerkship, which is basically a sort of internship after your degree. So I've completed my degree, I've completed my honors, and then that internship where you write your board exams and all of that, I just had to complete that before I would qualify as an attorney. And after which, obviously, I can use my rights of appearance in court to pursue public interest and human rights. The human rights space can be very difficult and very competitive to get into. It also tends to be on a volunteer basis, so it's a little bit difficult to make an income out of it, at least when you first start. So that is the normal day in my life. I tend to be in court a lot, is the short answer. I can do vlogs and I can definitely film aspects of my day to show you, but obviously within court, there's certain just ethical boundaries that I would not cross. Motion court, you obviously can't film things like that. Question two is, what kind of work do you do, and does it change how you read or what you notice in stories? So, again, as I said, I am a practicing lawyer, and I don't know, because I can track my reading from before and after law, and I don't really think that it changed. I think before law, I was actually studying pharmacy first, and I was very interested in sociology, politics, anthropology, a lot of those social issues. And that, I mean, my reading is one of the reasons that I realized I was completely in the wrong field. And then after law, my reading has very much stayed the same. And then does it change what I read or what I notice in stories? Definitely when I was a teenager, I was recommended these kind of lawyer writers, or not. I mean, Jodi Picoult is not necessarily a lawyer herself, but a lot of the stories devolve into courtroom disputes. And even at the time, I found it a little bit laborious as a teenager. I found that Jodi Picoult doesn't really have an understanding of the inner world of characters. It's her stories are very plot and events driven, but you don't really get an insight into the lived experience of characters. They tend to feel very flat and not human. Her stories can be a bit formulaic, and again, once you've read one Jodi Picoult, you've read all of them. So I think I wouldn't really read kind of your law procedural books, because firstly, I see enough of that in my profession. I don't need to see it again outside in my leisure time. And secondly, a lot of these books are American, and the American legal system is quite different to the South African legal system. We don't have things like a jury here. The US is also federalism, so each US state has a different constitution, or it's run very differently. So the laws and the legislation are very different from state to state. Whereas in South Africa, there isn't federalism; it's a constitutional republic. So the laws in the Northwest Province and in KwaZulu Natal are exactly the same. There are provincial variations, but it's very uniform for the most part. Does it change how I read and what I notice in stories? I don't think so. Question three is, are you a morning person or a night owl? I'm very much a morning person, and fortunately my fiance is too, so very much in the same rhythm. Question four is, do you recharge by being alone or by talking to people? I've always been a very introverted, very kind of quiet person, maybe to the point of pathology. So I've been training myself to just be a lot more comfortable around people. I was very shy growing up, and I think from the ages of 11 to about 21, I was almost mute, so like selectively mute, I suppose. And honestly, the one thing that got me out of that was booktube. That was the place that taught me how to speak freely and without inhibition. um, Question 5 is, what drains you more, too much socializing or too much isolation? I really enjoy isolation. I think, living alone and just being a very independent and self-sufficient person, is that's my default. But again, I need to learn to be less, maybe resourceful, less independent. So socializing does tend to drain me. I will be perfectly honest. I tend to notice a lot of details, maybe to the point of hypervigilance. So again, that's something that I'm training myself to not be so much on the extreme. I would like to be a bit more balanced. Question 6 is, what's something that you enjoy that has nothing to do with reading? I not rollerblade, I roller skate. I do a lot of dance as well, various dance styles. Out of all of the ones I've tried, so I've tried ballet, salsa. I've tried a lot of them. I can't remember. Contemporary, yes, I've done that. And I think belly dance is something that I really gravitate to at the moment. Something that you enjoy that has nothing to do with reading. I also swim a lot. I draw. I'm very artistic as well. Question 7 is, do you like planning things ahead of time or figuring things out as you go? And I think, I've spoken to my fiance about this, where it's not necessarily that I'm a very type A person who needs to schedule everything to death. It's just that my 9 to 5 is very structured already. And if I don't plan things, then things don't happen. Because within a 9 to 5, you can get very fatigued and you don't feel like it and all of that. And I think I make a routine out of swimming before work. I make a routine out just to make sure that I get enough exercise in. It's just best for my well-being. If I don't have any movement, then I do tend to feel mentally restless. So yeah, I do tend to plan and schedule things, but not necessarily because I'm like tight-fisted or anything, but it's just so that things can happen along with my work schedule. Question 8 is, do you like working alone or alongside others? Now, again, I tend to be a very independent person. Working parallel with people where I'm not necessarily dependent on someone else, then sure, that's wonderful. But I have had points in time in my life at various points. So this is talking about school projects, work projects, where it's you're running a relay race and you have to pass the baton to the next person. And you can sprint as much as you want, you can kill yourself as much as you want, but there is only one stretch that you are doing within this relay race. And sometimes it feels like other people are standing still, and there is just no possible way for you to essentially win the race if people are standing still. So again, my independence is because of feeling let down by a lot of different people at a lot of stages in my life, which again, I'm still trying to be a lot more interdependent and essentially trust that other people will get things done and give people that opportunity to prove me wrong in thinking that no, I need to do everything myself. So question 9 is, are you more sentimental or more practical? The way I read this, because some people say they're sentimental and so they retain a lot of objects to the point of almost hoarding. I've definitely seen that up close, and so I tend to be a lot more practical and utilitarian in terms of the objects that I retain and that kind of thing. But I don't think that cancels out sentimentality. I do think I tend to be a sentimental person in the sense that I remember details about people. I'm very good at giving gifts. People are often quite taken aback by that. My fiance and I have a story about orange juice boxes, and that's how he really began to see how much I deeply cared for him in the little gifts that I give that are quite thoughtful and very tailored to the person. I've got a friend who's obsessed with crocheting, so I got her this craft kit that she very much loved, and a friend who's into tarot cards, and I like know nothing about that world. But yeah, so I think I am practical but also sentimental. Maybe that's a bit of a cop out of an answer. Question 10 is, what kind of pace do you prefer in life? Busy, steady, or slow? So I think I maybe make myself busy so that I can avoid certain emotions creeping up on me. So I just keep my head down, and I tend to have a lot of ambition and drive and this fire under my bum, I suppose. And my fiance is a very good contrast to that. He's very, I wouldn't say slow, maybe steady is the word. He's got these periods of just intense busyness, but he's also very good at being leisurely and resting as well. So that's definitely something that I would really like to learn a lot more, is to be very intentional about rest and almost schedule rest, um, and just, yeah, feel things as they come and be a bit more spontaneous about that. I think ever since meeting him and just being with him in my life, it has given a lot of balance. I think both of us have really balanced each other out in a fantastic way. Question 11 is, what is a simple task that you strangely enjoy doing? um my fiance enjoys jigsaw puzzles. I enjoy cooking. Okay, what I view as simple, I've been cooking for a long time, ever since I was like 5, 6 years old. I was raised among some very conservative people, so it was, these are the things that you need to do to be a perfect wife. And so I swore myself off marriage and just never wanted to be bound to a man. And so I have been cooking for a very long time, and it has given me a lot of skill within the kitchen and within the culinary world, and it's given me an appreciation for food, and definitely for food anthropology as well, I think. So there's parts of my upbringing that were not great, let me just put it that way, but I have learned a lot. So I don't know, cooking, I think. And I can do very elaborate things without essentially breaking a sweat. Question 12 is, are you naturally early on time or late? And I tend to be very naturally early. My fiance is ADD, he has time blindness, and so he tends to be naturally late. Question 13 is, what motivates you more, curiosity or responsibility? um I think curiosity is an intrinsic motivator and responsibility is an extrinsic. And so naturally, the extrinsic motivator tends to, I mean, sorry, the intrinsic motivator tends to motivate you more to go the distance, and it motivates you more with consistency. The extrinsic motivator, I don't know that that's as motivating for me, because with the extrinsic motivation, I very much just do bare minimum. Question 14 is, what do you tend to overthink? So, what helps you feel grounded? What do I overthink? You know what? I think it's important to reframe that. I think those of us, if we have a propensity for overthinking, anxiety, these kinds of things, I think reframe it for yourself. This is the way that you are. You tend to focus on details. You tend to be, so instead of me thinking of it as over accommodating or people pleasing or overthinking, let's reframe that. I tend to be a considerate person. Let's not pathologize every single thing about our personalities. Yes, they can be taken to extremes, but I think overly pathologizing is also another issue. So what do I overthink? I don't know. I don't overthink. I claim that energy for 2026. I don't overthink. What helps you feel grounded? I meditate. So I've been meditating since I was about 16, which is now more than 10 years. I swim. That very much grounds me. Things like dance, things like rock climbing. So any like physical activities generally do help. Yeah, I think reading as well is a very grounding activity. It's a very thoughtful, it's a very deliberate activity. I think things like cooking as well, it does ground me to a certain extent. When I drive, I also tend to just listen to music, and I think music is a very grounding force within my life. So question 15 is, what is something that you always notice when entering a room? The people, the energies. I pick up on a lot of social cues. Question 16 is, what kind of humor do you naturally use? It's been observed about me since I was like 11 years old that I have a very dry sense of humor. So I think that's naturally the kind of humor that I use. very situational, dry, and maybe a little bit literary as well. Like, there's around certain kinds of people, I do have to modify my vocabulary and simplify it. But naturally, yeah, maybe a little bit more literary, a bit more bookish, a bit more niche kind of sense of humor. Question 17 is, do you usually multitask or single task? So I was talking to my fiance about this as well in the kitchen. I asked him, like, are you not capable of multitasking in the kitchen, because he does tend to burn things. Um, yeah, in the kitchen, I generally tend to multitask. I'll have things like on, this takes 20 minutes to cook. I need to start with this first, whatever. So I tend to multitask in that sense. But in terms of intellectual tasks and very labor intensive tasks for work, I do very much single task. Maybe I find my attention waning, or yeah, like if I'm doing legal research and I do feel myself losing a bit of momentum, maybe I just get up, get some water, stretch my legs. So maybe that's multitasking, maybe that's single task. I think it's a little bit of both. It depends very much on the task. Question 18 is, what is your default reaction to free time? Do you plan or do you relax? I think again, it depends on the rhythm of the season. If it's been very heavy in terms of litigation and work, then I will very much relax. But I do also try to schedule things that I know will be relaxing, even if I don't necessarily feel like it at the time. So I'll schedule going to a friend's house and we all just paint together. Um, at first, when you're on the drive there, you might think, oh, I don't have energy for this. I think I'd rather just be kicking back and passively watching TV. But I just find painting to be a lot more rejuvenating. Swimming is really rejuvenating to me. So I also schedule my relaxation time. But sometimes there is a place for just staring at a wall and doing nothing. Question 19 is, are you comfortable with silence around other people? And my answer to that is most definitely. Question 20, do you usually remember conversations or impressions? And yes, very much. I mean, I remember going to my previous high school for something and seeing someone where, we had just known each other briefly as acquaintances. And from 9 years ago, I could remember, was it 9 years? Something like that. It was like a ridiculous amount of time. I could remember so much that she had told me about her ambitions and where she saw herself going. And I think I really remember all of these things, and whether it's acquaintances, close circle, again, I very much have to modify myself because I can get socially exhausted very quickly, but I think it's just because I take everything in. So yeah, that is the tag. So bye, BookTube.